Well, with me now to discuss how Ukraine's new president is getting ready to step up to the plate is Yuval Weber. He's Associate Professor of Russian and Eurasian Studies at the Kennan Institute here in Washington, D.C. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, obviously, winning more than 70% of the vote, no slim margin at all. How much of this success was due to his populist anti-corruption platform versus other factors?
So it was more, in addition to being populist and anti-corruption, it was also very vague. He was so far ahead after the first round that he adopted a strategy of trying to effectively avoid his opponent for the several weeks in between the first and second rounds. And so during campaign events, he smiled broadly, didn't say very much, and ended up with the largest election victory in Ukraine's history.
And certainly made good use of social media as well. And life really is imitating art. We know that Zelensky was a comedic actor on the show Servant of the People, about a school teacher who ends up becoming president and taking on the oligarchs. But in real life, taking on the real oligarchs, what sort of challenges is he facing?
So he faces two big challenges. One is that people effectively, and this is part of his election campaign, was to confuse the character with him. So there's a lot of sort of belief that he can do anything, sort of what the character did as well. But when it comes to the oligarchs, one of the main sources of criticism against Petro Poroshenko, the previous incumbent, is that he himself was an oligarch, was one of these business tycoons whose money had been made in confections, TV, lots of other things. And Zelensky is associated with a different oligarch, a guy named Igor Kolomoisky, who had one of the largest banks nationalized in the past couple of years in Ukraine and had to flee to live in Israel. And so there's been a lot of talk that Kolomoisky is in fact the person who is supporting Zelensky and is the sort of the power and the ideas behind the actor turned politician.
So then with that being said, obviously, as you mentioned, very light on the details. What do we know about his priorities as president?
So he's been vague, but there are three big things that sort of would face any president in Ukraine. One is restoring national sovereignty, national dignity vis-a-vis Russia, and bringing the war in Donbass to an end. That's pretty difficult because Vladimir Putin and the Russians are pretty difficult customers to deal with. The second thing is tackling the corruption, which is associated with the oligarchs and which is associated with the previous style of government. And one of the main sources of criticism against Poroshenko is that he didn't really end the system of corruption. He just ended the pro-Russian elite with a new, basically pro-Poroshenko elite. And then the third thing is keeping up with the reforms that will get Ukraine closer and closer to joining the European Union, which is supported by an extremely strong majority of Ukrainian people.
So then, how much of a learning curve, how much patience do you think voters are going to have, given the seriousness of the challenges that he's up against? Are they going to give him much of a chance?
So people believe that Zelensky has one really big chance. So currently, the presidential elections and the parliamentary elections don't overlap. So he has a basically deadlocked parliament, which is not going to do very much for him between now and October. But what people really believe is that with his TV experience and his sort of optimism and positivity, that what he can do between now and then is create public support through messaging, through social media, through just general enthusiasm, so that when the next parliamentary elections come, he'll be able to support some party or some faction that will be in government and will basically implement the reforms that he wants. And the reforms that he wants are all about open government.
So what, if anything, can Ukraine do to really spur growth and investment when you do have this backdrop of uncertainty over the parliament, and you also have, obviously, the pressure from Russian geopolitical concerns?
So really the one thing that Zelensky can do is provide some sort of certainty that he's going to be there for a couple years and that he won't be the pawn of other oligarchs. And that's really his challenge. Can he provide not just the message that he's going to be able to do something, but to show that he has ideas that if given the appropriate power and support in parliament, that he would be able to implement all the things that people want.
Now, Ukraine is also one of the poorest countries in Europe. How do you see that relationship potentially developing under Zelensky?
Well, one of the major sort of detriments in the Ukrainian economy right now is that they're experiencing labor emigration. there are approximately 2.5 to 3 million Ukrainians of working age who have left the country, primarily to Russia, Poland, Czech Republic, and other countries in the region. And so those are the very sorts of people who could otherwise be relied upon to power small and medium-sized enterprises. So Zelensky, in a sense, needs to provide enough of an environment for entrepreneurship and for business to actually succeed on its own merits that would then encourage those people not merely to come back, but to come back with capital from abroad, come back with ideas from abroad, and use them, in essence, to do a takeoff of the Ukrainian economy, particularly in the center of the West, the center of the country and the West, where people have gone to Poland, Czech Republic, and so forth, as well as people who, from the East, who have gone to Russia. He needs to bring the people back and make sure that they don't go to war with each other.
Well, certainly a tall order indeed. Thank you so much. Always good to have you on. Yuval Weber there, Associate Professor of Russian and Eurasian Studies at the Kennan Institute.